Try to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello everyone, my name is Mark, aka Derringer. Today is Sunday, June 23rd, and you are listening to episode 214 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for planet-side news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. Speaking of that Support the Show tab, people are still hitting it up. I mean, I got to give a big thank you this week to Evan, who made a donation in the middle of the week. I really appreciate it. You guys have been coming out of the woodwork lately. I really appreciate it. I'm humbled every time any one of you decide to give me any amount of money as a donation to support the show itself. I really do appreciate it. But I don't want to talk about donations forever. I spent a good bit of time talking about that last week. So certainly don't need to do that again this week. Instead, what's been going on with me personally, playing quite a bit of PlanetSide 2 recently. Well, look at that. It just pops up on my Discord right now. Here's the ops schedule for next week for B-Way. I'll have to log in tonight and play a whole bunch of that, as I always do every Sunday night. Yeah, that's a big one. If you guys want to see me in-game, I always play Sunday nights, as long as I've got the podcast recorded in time. I do B-Way ops on Sunday nights, so you guys can always find me in-game on Sunday nights. Maybe you get killed by me. You'll know it's me because I'm one of the only people who has the dollar bill camo in-game. And so you'll know when you get killed by me because I'm one of the only ones. Other than that, like I said, playing a lot of PlanetSide 2, doing a lot of yard work. I know that's the most boring stuff to talk about. Yard work, getting my pool ready. Pool is officially open, so if you guys live near me and know where I live, feel free to stop by and swim in the pool. You're more than welcome. But what's in store for this week's show? Well, first I have a PC Hotfix to talk about, which brought some fixes and didn't bring some others. You'll know what I'm talking about when I dig into it. After that, I want to talk about the June 18th PTS update, which reintroduced the summer event, but also introduced a highly controversial new alert. And speaking of that alert, I'll do a deeper dive into that alert itself in its own topic. And then I'm going to finish up this week talking about RAM. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. So first up, like I said, I want to talk about the stuff that is live first. So we're going to talk about the June 20th PC hotfix. And then in the second topic, we'll back in time and talk about the PTS update because I'd much rather cover the stuff that's definitely on live first. I mean, there's a chance that some of you listen to this and only listen to the podcast to try and get the current information about the game. So I always like to throw that stuff up first. So any new listeners, hello. So first up, like I said, June 20th, we got a PC hotfix. It was all miscellaneous changes, fixes, and improvements. The first one listed was that they feel that the Infiltrator cloak should now be visually similar on all settings, and that they fixed the various weapons and cosmetics shaders that weren't playing nicely with cloak. This is not 100% true. There are still issues with Infiltrator Cloak, so don't think that if you've been not playing PlanetSide 2 because Infiltrator Cloak is broken, that it is 100% fixed. It is not. The weapon and cosmetic shaders version of it does sound like it's fixed. I saw quite a few people posting on Reddit thanking the devs for fixing that. However, like I said, just the cloak itself still doesn't appear to be completely 100% fixed. So, I mean, I'm noticing still being able to see infiltrators as they run across the screen. So I take those comments with a grain of salt. And I know the devs are aware that that is the case as well. Moving along, though, they did reduce the frame rate hit when using Heavy Assault Shield in conjunction with some of the newer weapon models. Honestly, I hadn't noticed that much of a frame rate hit, but then I don't play a ton of Heavy Assault. They did also change the aerial anomaly victory threshold. They've dropped it down to 10,000 points. It used to be 15,000. I think that's just to move the alert along a little bit faster. Also, with the anomaly, the swirly visuals got a minor update that makes them appear a bit fuller on screen. They also fixed that UI element that was incorrectly listing bundle contents in the depot itself. They also made some changes to the join combat. They had made some changes in the last update. They reverted some of those, and now it's only using drop pods as a backup spawn method. Honestly, I'm disappointed in this one. Obviously, you guys see the logo for my podcast. I mean, I love the drop pods in PlanetSide 2. It is one of the iconic things in the game that I really like. And I wish they'd use drop pods more often. I'd like to see more drop pods in the sky rather than less. I wonder if it's because people are pointing out the bugs that they're getting from the drop pods and things like that. But I mean, not to go on too much of a tangent regarding drop pods. Again, I love drop pods. It is the iconic thing in PlanetSide 2. When I think PlanetSide 2, I think drop pods into the game itself. Now, I mean, you can say other games have drop pods, like if you play Warhammer 40K, there's drop pods in there, but PlanetSide 2 and drop pods go hand in hand. I would love to see drop pods change to be better than they are right now. Bring back the collision of the drop pods that could kill enemy air and armor and people, at least people more often than they currently do right now. I really miss that within the game itself. I mean, you used to be able to drop a drop pod, hit an aircraft, and destroy it. And that used to feel so good. It was even kind of a strategy to kind of knock out an enemy galaxy that was at max height. I mean, you'd have to hit it a couple times. You couldn't be just one. But it certainly was a strategy that I feel is missing from the game itself. But enough about my drop pod tangent. You guys know I love drop pods. The biggest fix in this hotfix, though, is that NSO characters have spawn beacons once again. This was the biggest, maybe not biggest, one of the most annoying things about playing NSO characters. And I didn't even talk about it last week when I did my review or 2-month in review on my thoughts on NSO characters. But not having beacons was a huge annoyance with NSO characters, so glad to see that those are back again. Also, Warp Gate spawn locations for all unlocked continents should now appear at all times. Basically, there were instances where those weren't showing up as a proper spawn, and now they are. Mine Guard for NSO characters no longer appears twice for harassers and sunderers. Clicking on reinforcements needed will no longer prevent the player from deploying to that area. And finally, spawning into balance fights at contested regions with less than 60 allied population should now work. That was obviously just a bug where if there was less than 60 players on your side, you weren't being allowed to spawn there. Now, that changes in the game, and I know there are still a lot of tweaks that need to be done with the spawn system itself. The devs themselves have come out and said it's not 100% where we want it to be. It's getting there. I think we still have at least a few more tweaks to the respawning before we get it to a perfect, I guess perfect isn't the word that I would use, but a better state than it is right now. I think we're getting there, but we're not 100% there yet. So even though there's no comments to that inside this hotfix, know that the devs are still working on it. Other known issues that they specifically mentioned is the screen clamped 3D HUD indicators are moving too quickly still under certain conditions. I think that's primarily when you're in an aircraft. They're also working on the invisible vehicle bug and the frozen loadouts bug. They know about those. And also, after this hotfix went live, Nick did say on Twitter that a small PC client patch was released this afternoon for the speculative fix for that freezing loadout and invisible vehicle bugs, and they do want you to let them know if you still encounter them after picking up that client-only patch that went live. I didn't get a chance to play since that went live, so I can't comment on whether that's been completely 100% fixed for me. Granted, I wasn't experiencing either of those issues, so it'll have to be other people that are commenting whether that's been completely fixed or not. But that was the entire PC hotfix. Again, it was a hotfix. It was not an entire game update. I do expect that we're probably going to see a game update this week because the summer event's coming and stuff like that. So look for something bigger next week. But with that, let's move on to the PTS update next. And that PTS update dropped on June 18th. So like I said, we're kind of going back in time a little bit. But again, I want to make sure I cover the live stuff before I cover the PTS stuff. Because again, not everybody goes on the PTS to test this stuff out. So first up with the PTS, like I said, the summer event is now available if you want to play around with this before it actually comes to live, which I think it's probably going to be coming live this week if you're listening to the show. So Soldier Soaker is back. That's the water-filled pistol sidearm. It's fun. I like the pistol. Also, the water balloons are back. That's basically a grenade. And know that those are back to help you towards the event completion itself. They've also brought back the summer directive, and it has changed up a little bit. So let's just go through what these directives are as they stand on PTS. Note that they could change before they come to live. So the first is the beat the heat, and you got to score kills with the summer holiday weapon. That's obviously the Soldier Soaker or the water balloon. Beachhead is kill enemy vehicles while in a vehicle yourself. That promotes vehicle versus vehicle play within the game. King of the Castle is to earn experience by capturing or defending a control point. The summer support ribbons, you got to earn those by resupplying or repairing friendly vehicles while in a vehicle yourself. Next up is a new one called Tidal Wave, earning kills against max units during the maximum pressure event, which I'll talk about in a moment. And finally, another new one, the Tour Guide, while piloting a vehicle, earn gunner kills on enemies defending an aerial anomaly. So the last two, kind of interesting because we have not gotten too many directive things that have been tied specifically to events. So as you can see, the maximum pressure, which is a new one, and also the aerial anomaly. I think it might be difficult to do some of these because we're stuck hoping that the two events pop up more often than not. And I also wonder if we're going to see these pop up a lot more often than they currently do on live. So let's talk about alert changes because first they removed refine and refuel and the gaining ground alerts from the rotation, and I do think that that is particularly to have the aerial anomaly pop up more often and the maximum pressure pop up more often. And what is that maximum pressure? So if you've been living under a rock, this one's been getting a lot of flack, I guess a lot of talk on both sides actually. Maximum pressure is a new alert that asks players to get as many kills as possible. And the kind of wrench they're throwing into this is that they're making max units free for the duration of the event. Assuming that it's a 30-minute event, you're going to get a lot of maxes being pulled, and hence why getting kills against maxes during the maximum pressure event is the tidal wave thing in the summer directive itself. So I'm going to talk about maximum pressure a bit in its own topic, so just stay tuned for that in the next one. So moving along, they did make some changes to the thumper. These are basically just adjustments and fixes, though. They've added a new heavy assault directive challenge that asks you to get assist ribbons with a heavy weapon, and that's obviously going to tie directly into the thumper itself because it's going to be doing a lot of splash damage and therefore a lot of assist ribbons. At a later date, they're also going to be removing the lasher, jackhammer, and mini chain gun medals from the heavy assault directive, which is kind of interesting that they're going to be removing it. I mean, obviously, I've done the Lasher one on my VS character, and that's obviously counting towards my heavy assault. I'm surprised that they're going to be taking this away, and especially because obviously they're adding the Thumper one in. Maybe they don't want to make it too easy for people to do the Lasher Jackhammer mini chain gun and then also the Thumper on top of that. I kind of wish that they would revert this change on the PTS. There's not a lot of explanation why they're going to be removing this. I also hope that when they remove this, that they're not planning on removing anybody who's grandfathered into this, because that would certainly suck for somebody like me who doesn't play a lot of heavy assault. I've got Lasher done, and I don't think I have anything else done on my heavy assault character or on my VS character for heavy assault. And if they were to take this away, it would be a huge step backwards for me, and I don't think that I would like that. So hopefully, devs, you're listening to this one, and maybe don't remove that, or at least let us be grandfathered in onto that, because that would kind of suck. And then finally on the Thumper, the Disruptor and Incendiary ammo both should now be functioning correctly on the PTS. Speaking of those, I do think that those were the final issues with the Thumper that were holding it back from coming to live. So I'm really hoping that we're going to see this week the summer event go live, Maximum Pressure go live, and Thumper all go live. That would all be awesome stuff if we get a nice big game update with all that stuff in it. There were also some other miscellaneous changes, fixes, and improvements. A lot of those stuff is what I just talked about in the game update that it's gone live. In fact, every single one except for the Infiltrator cloak one is stuff that had all gone live. So again, reducing the frame rate hit for heavy assault shield, reducing the aerial anomaly victory threshold, the swirly visuals, the bundles not listing correctly, join combat changes, the NSO characters of the spawn beacons, warp gates being unlocked, mine guard issues, reinforcements needed, the spawning and balance fights with less than 60 allied players. All those are in and fixed in the game already. The only one that's not there is they had another potential fix for blank reward notifications after completing an alert. Again, that's the only one that's still on PTS. Other than that, they do have some other known issues, and, I spoke too soon about the Thumper. They said the alternative ammo types for the Thumper are currently not working. That's something that they are going to be fixing. Again, hopefully they get that fixed, because I would love to see the Thumper come live this week, along with all the other changes. So that is the entire PTS update. And again, I know kind of going back in time to talk about that based on the other stuff that just went live on the 20th. A lot of that stuff is live. So again, there's your PTS update. And again, PTS update, don't forget, that is a separate download. If you go on the Reddit, the PlanetSide Reddit, and you Google, PTS download, something like that, you can find all the instructions on how to download the PTS. It is a completely separate game element. Also, I do know that they recently added the PTS to Steam as well. So if you're doing stuff on Steam, you can download that as a separate download as well. With that, let's move on to topic 3. All right, that third topic is kind of the elephant in the room at this point, and that is the new maximum pressure alert. And now, I know I just talked about it, but again, maximum pressure is the new alert that's asking you to get as many kills as possible, and it's also making max units free for the duration of the event. Now, we're under the impression that when this goes live, it's going to be a 30-minute event alert. And therefore, it's not going to last forever. But obviously, the initial gut reaction to this by many people is that this is the most stupid decision that Daybreak Games has made to date. A lot of people hate maxes in PlanetSide 2, and giving people the ability to pull them for free for an entire alert is just pissing a lot of players off. I've seen quite a few people say that they are going to completely log out of the game anytime a maximum pressure alert goes live. I'm curious to see what my outfit is going to talk about this tonight while we're playing Ops. I'm going to see how they all feel about maximum pressure. But I think the initial reaction was that there's a lot of hate for the maximum pressure alert that's coming to the game. A lot of that hate was directed at Rel. I don't think that it should be all directed at Rel, because I don't think that this was just him saying, well, I'm going to throw maxes in, an alert like this into the game and screw everybody because I hate players. That's not Rel. So I certainly don't think that he deserves all of the hate on this if this is something that you hate. So let's start off by talking about what the community feels about this in general, because there was a straw poll that somebody threw together, which I'll share a link to this in case you're curious to see, to make sure that I'm being honest on this. But with this straw poll, it just asked the simple question, is maximum pressure a good idea? Yes, no, or indifferent to it. And there are almost 700 votes to this. So, I mean, not a huge percentage of the entire community of PlanetSide 2, but enough of the community of PlanetSide 2 to actually think that these results feel valid enough to get the pulse. And as it stands right now, it's almost 50-50 on whether people like it or hate it. I mean, 38% think that it's a good idea, 36% think it's a bad idea, and 26% think that they don't care one way or another. I mean, if you take those results, and I know this isn't proper statistics or anything, but let's take the yes and then add in half of the indifferent people, you get 50.67%. So 51% of the player base either thinks that it's a great idea, that yes, they want this, or don't care one way or another. And then we can do the same thing with the no's, and you get 49.34. So right now, if you just want to make this a yes or no and take the people who don't care one way or another and split them in half, you're at 51% say yes, it's a good idea, 49% say no, it's a good idea. And I mean, that's almost as 50-50 as you're going to get in this game. So I do think the initial gut reaction to everybody saying that this is awful for the game is not the way that the entire population of the game thinks on this. Again, I'm curious how my outfit, B-Way, is going to take this. We don't pull maxes a lot because we don't think that they're Bushido, which you can laugh at that if you want. It's just since we're pretty much an infantry-only outfit, pulling maxes is cheesy, and so we don't pull maxes a lot. But seeing that half the population of the game itself, and I know I'm painting broad strokes on this because 700 votes is not, the entire population of this. But again, it's good enough for us to infer that this is how the community feels, and it's almost 50-50 on whether this is a good or a bad idea. I think you do have max mains who think this is great, and I do also think you have people on the opposite end of the spectrum who are going to log off when this comes, but you can't make everybody happy all the time. So I want to talk about this a little bit further. What are my thoughts on maximum pressure? My first gut reaction to this was, God, there's going to be even more maxes in the game. And I've kind of become jaded against maxes like everybody else. I dislike running up against them. I play NC the most, and the NC Max, I feel, still has been nerfed too much, and therefore I don't feel that they're going to compete well against the VS and the TR Maxes at this point. I mean, Madman, you're going to get a lot of awesome statistics on max kills when this event actually goes live, hopefully next week. So I'll be curious to see what his numbers reflect when that happens. But again, my gut reaction was the same with a lot of people, that this is going to be awful. There's just going to be so many maxes in the game right now. But I do think that might be tempered with this alert. I'm sorry, with not the alert, with the directive that's going to be making people try to kill maxes more. I expect to see a lot of people playing engineer. I do think that perhaps Daybreak Games has not thought of this, but they may be selling a lot more archers in the game. What I think would be awesome for Daybreak Games to do, and I don't think that they're going to do it, but if you wanted to be awesome, take this alert every time it spawns and make the ability to drop the short bow hugely increased when that alert happens. That would be a cool little olive branch towards the community. If I knew that I had a much better chance at getting the short bow, if my faction won that alert, I would play that alert a lot more often. It's something that with the ability to get a cooler weapon. So maybe the devs will think about something like that. Again, we'll see a lot more engineers because everybody's going to be using the archer to kill maxes. I mean, we know the archer got a bit of a nerf, but it is still quite effective at killing maxes. So don't take that away from people playing engineer. Ultimately, I think I'm on the side that this is not a good idea for the game itself, but I'm not one of those people who's going to log out and not play when this goes live. I'll definitely going to be checking it out. And again, for me, it's going to be my ability to don't forget, you've got the heavy assault directive where you got to kill maxes as a heavy assault. I'll be pulling out my rocket launcher and trying to kill as many maxes as possible while this is actually alive. So again, my thoughts on this are that it's not going to be 100% bad, but maybe not the best event that we're going to get. Certainly, I welcome anybody else's opinion on this in the comments for this week's show. But enough about this new alert. Let's talk about the next topic, RAM in PlanetSide 2. And I know what you're thinking, ramming vehicles? No, I'm not actually talking about ramming vehicles. And this topic is not going to apply to PS4 players at all. I'm sorry. This is strictly PC players because a player named Ramans on Reddit posted that he was wondering why a streamer was getting 20% more frames on a practically identical setup to him. And when he did a little digging, he found that his RAM was not running at the expected speed that it was going to be run at. And once he went in and tweaked his RAM to be running at the speed it's supposed to be, 3200 megahertz, he instantly got a 20% increase in frame rate in the game itself. And he says he's now staying above 144 FPS in most fights. Now, obviously, if you're still on DDR3 RAM, I don't think anybody's still on DDR2 at this point. That's just ancient technology at this point. But if you have not made the upgrade or are using DDR4 RAM at this point, it might be time to upgrade. Well, I guess if you're running DDR3, it's because your motherboard supports DDR3. But if you do have access to DDR4 RAM and you're running something ancient in that RAM, I mean 2000 megahertz at this point is ancient, it might be time to look at a RAM upgrade as a potential increase to your frames. And for those of us that are running DDR4, now recently I upgraded to DDR4 RAM, and I can definitely say it runs a hell of a lot faster than DDR3 when I was running on it. It might be time to go and check to make sure that your settings are correct. I checked my settings and found that my 3200 megahertz RAM was only running at 2133, just like Raman's. And as a result, I went and tweaked mine, and I also saw an increase in frames. So again, this is more a PSA more than anything else, that if you are running DDR4 RAM, even DDR3, you should definitely check to make sure that your RAM is running at its expected highest level. because a lot of time motherboards automatically make it run lower than expected. You might need to do a firmware update on your motherboard or whatnot, but it's definitely worthwhile making that check to make sure that not only is your RAM running at the expected speed, but also your CPU running at the expected speed. Again, this is just a PSA. I didn't expect to see the same thing that he had happen to him, but I'm glad that I did, and I thought it was worthwhile just to mention it to all you as well. But that's going to be the fourth and final topic, so let's move on to housekeeping this week.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping.
Go away.
I coming anyway?
So no email, no voicemail, nothing like that. I did want to once again just make note of the donation that I received this week from Evan, because that did come to me via email, so that definitely fits into this week's mailbag. So again, Evan, I wish you left me your in-game name if you're listening. Send me a tweet with your in-game name. Send me a message on Reddit. Send me something with your in-game name just so I can recognize your in-game name as well as your first name. I'm not going to use your last name, even though I know it, because I appreciate everyone's anonymity. God, that one almost tripped me up. In addition, I know a lot of you guys have noticed that Romus has been absent. There haven't been a lot of veterans' voices happening in the past couple shows. Note that Romus is okay. He's had some life issues happening. I won't go into too much detail. But he is alive. I did get an email from him last week saying everything is great, everything's going fine. Stuff's been going on in his life that he just hasn't been able to put any veterans' voices out. But he does plan on coming back and doing more. So if you're listening to this podcast just to hear Romus, don't worry. It's going to be happening again soon. But that's going to be it for this week's show. So, as always, how can you get in touch with me or the show itself? Your first stop should be my website, www.instantactionpodcast.com. After that, you can always email me at instantactionshow@gmail.com. You can call me, leave me a voicemail at 347-4VM-4PS2. Those digits are 347-486-4772. And always, please follow the show on Twitter at InstActPodcast. That's INSTACT Podcast. But finally, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. But finally, thanks for listening, and keep spamming that Join Combat, formerly known as Instant Action button. Derringer out.
god. Derringer, please.